Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. You know that sinking feeling? That literal pit in your stomach when a confident website delivery suddenly turns into a super uncomfortable client conversation? You thought the project was a total home run, but out of nowhere, the client is on the line, and they are definitely not happy. We have all been there. Today, we're breaking down the 5 most common website quality issues that cause these agency nightmares, and we'll look closely at how a structured white-label WordPress solution, specifically partnering with an expert team like Viral Chili, can actually fix them at the root.
So the harsh reality sets in. A site you delivered with total confidence suddenly has measurable problems. The client's complaining about performance issues on their phone, or maybe they're reading about WordPress security vulnerabilities in the news. Or worse, essential functions are breaking down and actively hurting their business. But here's the thing we really need to understand. These post-launch nightmares are almost never due to carelessness. They are almost always the result of development decisions made without the necessary technical depth or process discipline required to prevent them in the first place.
So, here is our game plan for today. We're going to cover the uncomfortable client conversation, speed and security failures, UX and accessibility risks, the technical debt trap, the white label solution, and finally, how to turn these problems into absolute client trust.
Section 1. The uncomfortable client conversation, confronting the post-launch reality.
Think of your agency like a doctor diagnosing a really unhappy patient. You're basically at a crossroads. On one hand, you have the apology process. This is purely reactive, right? You're only fixing the damage after the client actually sees it, feels the pain, and complains. On the other hand, you have the quality process. This is proactive, preventing issues right at the development decision level. And this brilliantly illustrates why engaging an expert white label partner like Viral Chili is so vital. It shifts your entire agency mindset completely away from reactive apologies and straight into proactive quality. Moving to Section 2, Speed and Security Failures, the most visible client threats. All right, let's start with the loudest client complaints. Slow load times. 53%. Just let that number sink in for a second. 53% of mobile users will flat out abandon a website if it takes longer than 3 seconds to load. 3 seconds! That is not just a minor user annoyance. That is a brutal commercial reality. If a site is dragging on a smartphone or bombing Google's page speed tests, every single business outcome that site was built to produce is actively at risk.
Now, true white label professionals, like the folks at Viral Chili, they don't just slap a generic optimization plugin on there to chase vanity metrics. They go after the actual structural root causes. We're talking unoptimized images, render-blocking scripts, nasty plugin bloat, inefficient database queries, and inadequate caching. A real specialist diagnosis whether you need a fundamental architectural change or just a configuration tweak. They cure these specific structural issues to produce genuine, lasting speed improvements that your clients can literally feel.
And then there's the invisible, honestly terrifying threat of security. Clients fear this even if they haven't been hit yet, because when a site gets compromised, that reputational damage falls directly on your agency. But a dedicated white label specialist doesn't sit around waiting for a brute force attack. They execute a rigorous, structured security audit. They're checking plugin vulnerabilities, hardening file permissions, verifying user roles, hiding default identifiers, and securing database prefixes. Locking down this exposure before an incident happens is literally one of the clearest demonstrations of technical value your agency can possibly deliver. Section 3. UX and accessibility risks, silent failures, and compliance exposure. There is absolutely no worse way to find out a site is broken than having the client hear it from their own users. As our sources point out, addressing these issues through structured testing rather than reactive client feedback is the difference between a quality process and an apology process. So the crucial point is that finding out a touch interaction is totally busted on mobile, or that a layout looks amazing in Chrome but is a total disaster in Safari, should never be a post-launch surprise. Systematic, cross-device testing before launch is absolutely vital. UX inconsistencies, like broken mobile layouts or touch failures, obviously lead to a frustrated audience and lost engagement. But accessibility failures, those are a whole different beast. Missing alt text, absent area labels, or terrible color contrast. You're not just silently excluding a massive chunk of potential users, you are opening up severe legal and compliance risks, especially for clients in regulated industries. Partners like Viral Chili systematically audit against WCAG standards to mitigate those exact legal risks and broaden the site's audience. Let's move to and see how this builds in Section 4, the technical debt trap, the compounding cost of poor structure. Technical debt is kind of the ultimate insidious disease for a website. It's this progressive maintenance burden caused by poorly structured code, totally redundant plugin dependencies, and messy, undocumented custom modifications. And let me tell you, this debt compounds incredibly fast. Suddenly, a simple text swap takes hours, or a routine update completely breaks an unrelated part of the site. Development becomes disproportionately expensive because your developers are essentially playing archaeologist in a messy, undocumented codebase.
But hey, there's a cure. And thankfully, you don't always have to throw the baby out with the bathwater and rebuild from scratch. Specialists fix this debt progressively. Step 1, identify the structural debt and prioritize it by impact. Step 2, run systematic remediation on the unstable components, while leaving the stable ones completely alone. And Step 3, establish a clean, actually maintainable architectural foundation. It's about being smart and targeted, rather than forcing the client to pay for a whole new site.
Section 5. The white label solution, curing the disease, not just the symptoms.
A dependable white label WordPress developer is really the ultimate specialist for all 5 of these ailments. Now, what's really interesting about this is the core philosophy. Surface level fixes are basically just putting a band-aid on after the damage is already visible to the client. But true white label partnerships, like teaming up with Viral Chili, attack these conditions at the structural developmental level. They address the actual root causes, making sure they never develop into visible, embarrassing damage in the first place.
Finally, Section 6. Turning problems into trust. Opportunities in disguise. Believe it or not, finding a massive mess on a client's existing website is actually a huge relationship-building opportunity. Seriously, quality remediation demonstrates technical depth. It actually builds deeper trust than a site that just worked perfectly from day one. When you bring in an expert partner like Viral Chili to rescue a client from performance, security, and structural nightmares with genuine lasting improvements, you are proving your agency's long-term capability. You're showing them, hey, we can handle anything you throw at us, no matter how complex.
So what does this all mean for us? It leaves us with a pretty critical question. Are you ready to turn your agency's website quality issues into your absolute greatest competitive advantage? By embracing specialist support from experts like Viral Chili, you can cure the root causes of these issues and deliver incredible improvements that compound in value over the lifetime of a site. Resolve the nightmares your clients are already living with, and you will secure their loyalty forever. All right, that wraps up this explainer. Keep learning, keep building, and I will see you in the next one.